Welcome back to the Fulcre Lab podcast, part of the Fulcre Intelligence and Leadership Lab, where we talk intelligence, strategy, leadership, and discernment. If you've been tracking the series, you know we've been on a little journey. We started with analysis and critical thinking, took a detour into AI, and in the last episode, we went big on strategy, what it is, why tactics aren't enough, and how John Warden's Prometheus ideas turned a weapons school tactics guy like me into someone who at least occasionally thinks like an adult. Today is episode 6, and we're going to zoom in on one specific piece of strategy that almost everyone does badly at first, the future picture. And no, that is not a vision statement someone wrote at an offsite and then printed on a poster. We're going to talk about how to describe the future you want in a way that changes what you do tomorrow morning. This matters, whether you're planning a campaign, running a business, leading a team, or just trying to make your life less like a random PowerPoint animation. So grab your coffee or your energy drink or your third cup of regret, and let's talk about that part of strategy that functions like the beacon on the horizon, the future picture. Let me take you back to Prometheus Academy for a second. Picture a bunch of type A military and business folks in a room. We're all used to being the plan people. We think we're pretty good at strategy. Warden walks in and says, "Before we do anything else, tell me exactly where you want to be in, say, 3 years." Everyone nods confidently and provides the routine expected answers. Then he starts asking questions. What does that mean? How would you know if you got there? What's different from today specifically? What about your people, your systems, your reputation, your money, your capabilities? Within about 10 minutes, half the room realizes our strategy was basically more of the same, but better. Warden's point was simple. If your description of the future is fuzzy, your strategy will be fuzzy. If your description of the future is concrete, rich, and measurable, you suddenly have something that can guide hundreds of decisions. That description is what he calls the future picture. Think of it as the movie of your success, played 3 years ahead in high resolution. Not the trailer, the whole thing. It's the mental snapshot of the future you're actively trying to create that would not exist if you didn't do anything on purpose. Most organizations and a lot of individuals never really do this. They have goals, they have metrics, they have task lists, but they don't have a future picture. And you can feel the difference. Goals say, increase X by 10%. The future picture says, here's what this place looks like, feels like, and acts like when we've actually won. Once you have that, you can finally ask, okay, what has to change in our system to make that real? That's when the rest of Prometheus, centers of gravity, parallel operations, all the fun stuff starts to make sense. But without a future picture, you're just optimizing your bricklaying. Let's make this concrete. Warden breaks the future picture into what he calls key descriptors. Think of them as the main camera angles on your future. Instead of trying to hold one giant abstract vision in your head, you break it into segments like your people, your processes, your technology, your finances, your customers or stakeholders, your reputation, and your mission outcomes. For each of those, you answer a simple but ruthless question. If we were winning in 3 years, what would this look like? So instead of, we'll be more innovative, you might say, in 3 years, we're regularly fielding small, high-impact changes every quarter that directly improve our mission, and our people are not burned out and hate us slightly less. Instead of, we'll be better at analysis, you might say, our commanders and customers regularly tell us we see second and third order effects before they do, and they call us early because we influence the way they frame problems. In a business setting, instead of, we'll grow our market share, you might say, we're the default choice for this segment, and at least 50% of our new business comes from referrals. At the personal level, instead of, I want to be healthier, your future picture might say, I can climb 2 flights of stairs without bargaining with God. I sleep 7 hours most nights, and my doctor no longer sighs when she looks at my numbers. You get the idea. It's specific, it's concrete, and it's written as if it's already true. The other crucial piece is this: the future picture has to be both compelling and realistic enough that your people can see themselves in it. If it's just a fantasy, they'll roll their eyes. If it's just incremental, they'll be bored. Warden's line is that it needs high resolution, and it needs to be a beacon, not a fog machine. Now, here's where most of us mess it up. We confuse the future picture with a list of metrics. Metrics matter. Warden calls them measures of merit, numbers or indicators that tell you whether you're moving toward your future picture or not. But they're not the same thing as the picture itself. In fact, he warns that using purely tactical metrics as if they're strategic can be downright dangerous. The future picture is qualitative first. It's the story. Then you ask, okay, what would we have to measure to know we're getting closer to this? Those become your measures of merit. For example, if your future picture says, our analysts are consistently doing higher order thinking, a measure of merit might be, we routinely see explicit assumptions, alternative hypotheses, and evidence weighting in products, and our leadership uses that language too. If your future picture says, our unit has a healthy culture, you might measure retention of top performers, honest upward feedback, or the frequency of people speaking up with dissenting views without being destroyed in a parking lot afterward. At a personal level, if your future picture says, I'm living my faith with integrity in my work, maybe a measure of merit is, there were at least 3 moments this month where I chose conscience over convenience, and I can name them. The key is the future picture drives the measure of merit, not the other way around. If you start with metrics, you'll end up with a KPI dashboard that looks impressive and tells you very little about whether you're building the right future. If you start with the future picture, the metrics become servants, not masters. Let me give you a real-world kind of scenario that I've seen versions of in the Pentagon and in business. Imagine you're leading an intel organization that's been stuck in product factory mode. Lots of outputs, not much impact. Everyone's tired. The commander is vaguely dissatisfied, but can't quite articulate why. The default strategy is do the same thing but more, and maybe add a dashboard. If you apply this future picture concept, you pull your core team into a room, and you start in 3 years from now land. You ask them, let's pretend we somehow turned this place around, and 3 years from now the commander says, I finally get it. You're indispensable. What's different? After the awkward silence and the jokes, people might start saying things like, we're invited into planning earlier, not just reacting. Or we're spending more time on deep dives and less time cutting and pasting. Or we actually understand the adversary as a system, not just as a list of capabilities. You keep pulling on those threads until you can write a page that describes that future in plain language. Then you ask, okay, what are we measuring right now that has anything to do with this? Usually the answer is not much. You're counting products and deadlines, not insight and influence. So you rethink your measures of merit. Maybe you start tracking how often your work changes a plan, or how often leaders call you before they decide something. Those numbers will be messier and more qualitative at first, but they're infinitely more strategic. Suddenly you've moved from we produce 37 reports a week to our work meaningfully shifts decisions at least once a week. That's a different game. The same logic works in the corporate world. Future picture first, then realign what you're watching. Now, let's talk about one more piece of the Prometheus universe that fits hand in glove with the future picture: guiding precepts. Warden divides these into prime directives and rules of engagement. Think of them as the rails that keep your strategy from becoming win at any cost, or, on the other side, drift politely into mediocrity. Prime directives are the big, enduring statements about how you will and will not behave on the way toward your future picture. they're tied to your values. They don't change often. Nordstrom's "the customer is always right" is a classic business example. Rules of engagement are more situational. They're specific to this campaign, this season, this context. They might say, "We will prioritize speed over perfection for the next 6 months," or "We will not take work that distracts us from these 3 core customer segments, no matter how shiny the opportunity looks." Why does this matter? Because we can have a beautiful future picture and very clever measures of merit and still blow yourself up morally, relationally, or organizationally on the way there. Guiding precepts keep you from becoming the villain in your own story. In a military context, you might have a prime directive like, "We will not lie to ourselves or each other about what the data say, even when the truth is inconvenient." A rule of engagement might be, "For this operation, we will err on the side of oversharing analytic uncertainty, not overstating confidence." In a business, a prime directive might be, "We will not pursue growth that destroys our people." A rule of engagement might be, "We will say no to any contract that requires us to violate this staffing ratio, even if the money is tempting." In your personal life, a prime directive could be, "I will not sacrifice my family on the altar of my ambition." A rule of engagement might be, "For the next year, I will not take a role that requires more than X travel nights per month." You see how this ties the strategic to the moral and practical. Future picture says where. Measures of merit say how we'll know. Guiding precepts say what kind of human or organization will we be on the way. When you put those 3 together, you've already done more real strategy work than most organizations ever do. Let's land this in something you can actually use this week without needing a whiteboard and a 2-day offsite. Here's what I challenge you to do. Whether you're an Intel analyst, a leader, or just a human trying not to live on autopilot, pick one domain, your team, your current role, or your own life. Set a 3-year horizon. You can pick a different number, but 3 is far enough to matter and close enough to feel real. Write a 1-page future picture as if it's already true. Describe what good looks like across a few angles that matter: the work itself, the people, the systems or habits, and the impact you're having. Don't worry about getting it perfect. Worry about making it concrete. Then, for that same domain, jot down 3 measures of merit. Ask yourself, what could we reasonably observe or count that would tell us we're moving toward this picture? They don't all have to be numbers. They just have to be observable. Finally, write 2 or 3 guiding precepts, 1 or 2 that are more like prime directives, enduring values, and 1 or 2 that feel like rules of engagement for the next season. That's it. You have just built the skeleton of a strategy, whether anyone gave you permission to or not. You're no longer just reacting to taskers, meetings, or whatever the news cycle throws at you. You've drawn a picture on the horizon, chosen how you're going to measure progress, and decided what kind of person or organization you'll be on the way. From there, all the other strategic questions we've talked about, the system view, centers of gravity, parallel operations, have something to hang on. In the next strategy-focused episode, we'll start to play with that next layer. How to look at our world as a system, find your centers of gravity, and avoid the trap of spending your life sprinting around the outer ring chasing symptoms. For now, don't overcomplicate it. The question for this week is simple. 3 years from now, if things were going really well in this part of your life or work, what would be true? And what are you willing to say out loud about that future and how you'll behave on the way there? Draw the picture. The rest of the strategy has something to grow around. Thanks for spending this time with me on the Fulcrum Lab podcast. If this episode got you to scribble even a rough future picture on a legal pad, I'll call that a win.